Good afternoon, families. My name is Mark Sykes, your Vice Dean for Student Success. Welcome to our very first Parent and Family Town Hall. I want to acknowledge that there has been a lot of loss, both near and far. Our thoughts are here, our thoughts are with you, our thoughts are with our loved ones, and with our health workers and those working on the front lines. Our focus today is the university's ongoing response to COVID-19. We have several special guests. You will hear first from our president, Catherine Rowe. Catherine Rowe will offer insight into major decisions so far and highlight the planning underway. Next, Sam Jones, our Senior Vice President for Finance and Administration, will speak about the impact of COVID-19 on the William & Mary budget and how the university is working to flatten the financial curve. Anne-Marie Stock, our Vice Provost for Academic and Faculty Affairs, will address the transition to remote instruction, including its challenges and its opportunities. Kathleen Power, the Associate Vice President for Career Development, will speak about William & Mary's continuing and ongoing mission, and will share how they are continuing to help students succeed. Finally, Nick Vasquez, our International Travel and Security Manager, will share the university's approach to the challenges around international travel during this time. Following initial remarks, I will ask some of the most common questions we've received by families. During this program, you may send questions to us via the link inside the invitation, and we will continue to ask those questions until we are out of time. Again, thank you for joining our program today. President Rowe, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. I'm delighted to be joining you all tonight. Thank you for tuning in. I'm going to begin with a few words about the big picture, where we are now and what lies ahead. And we're going to touch tonight on all of the big questions that we've been hearing from families, as Mark said. We're going to try to give you a sense of how we are making decisions, both the decisions we've made so far and decisions that lie ahead. And if we haven't covered the specifics that are important to you, I hope you will send us your questions, because our goal is to be as transparent and concrete as possible. And the questions you send us help us enormously in doing that. The past 6 weeks have been a time of incredible challenge and also of resilience and creativity. William & Mary's mission is clear. It's still the same mission. We bring together the brightest students with outstanding faculty and staff, and we clear the decks for them to pursue learning at the highest levels. From that mission, we've established 4 goals that we've held to. They've guided our actions from the beginning. You've heard them before, but I think it's important always to repeat them. The first is to safeguard the health of our community. The second is to keep teaching and keep learning. The third is to keep our research operations and our university operations running. We are running William & Mary, though we're doing it in a different way. And then the fourth goal, one I know that you all share, has been to join the national effort to slow the spread of COVID-19. Every decision that we've made and the decisions that we're going to make going forward derive from those goals. We also recognize the immense weight that each of us is carrying right now, especially our students. In our community conversation on health and wellness a few weeks ago, one of our grad students observed that staying at home feels like not doing anything, except that right now, staying at home is incredibly hard work. It is action, it's important action, and we can see the effects of that action now. It's starting to be really encouraging that we can see that we are indeed slowing the spread of the virus. A junior who was one of our president's aides in a meeting earlier last week said to me something that stayed with me. She said, "It's not that we are taking classes from home right now. We are trying to finish the semester in quarantine." I'd love you just to hear the difference between those two statements. Finishing the semester in quarantine is an extraordinarily difficult task. Finishing the semester in quarantine, to do that is a triumph itself, period. So making it possible for our students to feel less stress, less strain in that unprecedented effort has been one of our key goals from the start. I hope you have seen that health and wellness has been an intense focus for us. I hope you've explored the programming on our virtual health and wellness website. It's imperative that we approach all the decisions that we make and our communications with care and with compassion. We value those qualities of this community so much. So I'm going to start us off with the two questions that students and parents have written about most to all of us and to me, at president at WM. The first is about commencement, and the second is about next fall. So commencement. This spring, we have been making decisions in a phased way because doing so allows us to adapt as we gain new evidence. Some key decisions needed to be delayed because the conditions are changing so rapidly, and commencement was one. Because we took that time to consult and then to collaborate on campus and coming up with solutions and consider before making that decision, we landed somewhere we're really proud of and hopeful about, honoring our traditions while also acknowledging what we can't replicate and generating new approaches. So we're using William & Mary's both and mindset, our ampersand, and we'll be doing commencement in person and virtually. We're in agreement that we want to celebrate with the class of 2020 in October, and we will confer degrees virtually on May 16th with the goal of making it joyful, inclusive, and also different. We know that all of us are going to remember this spring, and for those graduating, this commencement for the rest of our lives. So we're creating new traditions, we think. We can see that happening already as students are starting to imagine what a virtual degree conferral will be like. I see a high likelihood that the traditions that we craft together this spring will be ones that will carry forward, that they will mark William & Mary's community for decades to come. And I feel a lot of excitement and pride about that. I hope our soon-to-be graduates do as well. Looking into the future, the most frequently asked question is, what about the fall? The short answer is that we plan to be on campus in person as long as it's safe. So we're thinking about every creative approach that we can take to this semester and the rest of the year to make that possible. We're approaching this decision like the previous decisions and more that you'll hear about tonight in a phased way. This week, we've launched a small team to plan ahead swiftly over the next month. Provost Aguris will be leading the group focused on strategies for the fall semester and beyond. We're relying on data from the CDC and from our local health officials to make decisions about safety, but the goal is straightforwardly to be on campus. William & Mary is all about, at our heart, a face-to-face community. So we aim to have scenarios to share with the campus and with you by June. Stay tuned. I'll end there for now. I know we want to get to as many questions as possible. So thanks very much, Mike. Over to you. Mark.
Our next person that we're going to hear from is Sam Jones. Sam, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with the William & Mary budget?
Glad to do so, Mark. Thank you so much. So President Rowe addressed the overall budget in a message to the community that she put out earlier today. So first, I would encourage everyone to read that when you get the opportunity. And in her prior remarks, the president noted the 4 goals that we had established as we moved into what we called our crisis mode. Along with Vice President Ambler, Ginger Ambler, I chair the emergency management team. And so when we went into what were we going to do as the pandemic came into play, we established those goals early on. We're keeping those goals as we move into now what is more a longer term system of operations, mode of operations, while we deal with all the uncertainty that's out there. But what the term that was used earlier was flatten the curve. We usually hear that relative to the number of cases of the disease, but we're also using that as the term that we're using in terms of reducing our expenditures. There's tremendous uncertainty going forward. We all understand that. And so as the more we can reduce our expenditures today, the better off we will be tomorrow, and the better we'll be able to deal with the fall when the students come back to campus. Currently, as we project the losses to the university budget, we have a pretty broad range from 13 million to 32 million. The uncertainty of the moment sort of results in that range, and the fact that we are looking at both lost revenues that we might have, as well as new expenditures that we've had to put in place and will put in place over the summer as we prepare to bring the students back here to campus. Also, looking ahead, we are a public university. We receive significant funding from the state of Virginia. The state just finished their budget. I will tell you, when they started working on it, things were quite rosy. By the time they finished, we've gone into the economic environment that is across the country and really across the world. So we know there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of state funding for next year. So we want to be very prepared for that situation. So then the question becomes, well, what are we doing to flatten that curve, to reduce our expenditures? Just a few things. We almost immediately put a hiring freeze on for everything except mission critical positions, realizing that one of the largest expenses we have as a university is people. William & Mary higher education is a people intensive industry, but William & Mary is particularly that way. And so, we put a hiring freeze on to generate that, and that will continue through the summer with the idea of creating savings this year that we have available to support our programs next year. We put in place also really early a ban on travel. And some of this was coming out of the federal government, but we were actually ahead of the game in doing that, realizing that those plans that people had to travel weren't going to be able to occur, and we're recapturing those money. We've extended that through August as well to just generate as a larger pool of dollars as possible. The last thing we're doing is looking at discretionary expenditures. What are those things that we usually do when we're up and fully running as an institution? And we know not all of those are occurring. So we're, again, trying to limit that as much as possible. And we really appreciate the cooperation across campus that's allowing us to start, again, building that pool of funding. And as the president said, through the planning ahead function, a sub piece of that is reviewing all of the programs that we have in place and saying, what is mission critical? What are the things that we really have to do that are the heart of William & Mary and the education that we provide to our students? But there are some other things you'd say, well, actually, that's not a core to our mission. We might not want to be doing that. Thank you.
Sam, thank you so much for that. That actually was very helpful in understanding a little bit more about how William & Mary really is flattening our curve, especially when it comes to our budget and finances. I'd like to turn to Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie, can you tell us a little bit about the transition to remote instruction, both challenges and really the opportunities that are there? Anne-Marie, you are muted.
Thank you, Mark. I'm happy to share some thoughts. I'll begin by saying in my 27 years at William & Mary, I recall disruptions to the academic year. We've had ice storms that closed us down for a day or two, hurricanes that sent us home for a week on a few occasions, but never a pandemic. So it's been challenging, really challenging to pivot more than 2,000 courses from in-person to remote and online delivery, but we've done it, and we're really proud of that. It's taken amazing efforts on the part of so many specialists in our Studio for Teaching and Learning innovation, which fortunately we launched just this past August, really gave faculty a lot of support in making the transition, as did others in instructional technology and the library. As President Rowe mentioned, we've also adjusted policies to create more flexibility for students and faculty. And I think the pass-fail grading option is really one that has helped reduce student anxiety significantly. Is everything perfect? I wouldn't be honest if I said it was. I think faculty and students continue to face challenges. They may not have ideal conditions at home for teaching and learning remotely. They don't have access to some important infrastructure, labs and equipment and materials, and our extraordinary library, and we all feel isolated. Alongside the difficulties, though, there are some highlights, some new things that we're discovering. For example, content experts from around the world, some of them William and Mary alumni, are making guest appearances in classes with much greater frequency, and our students and faculty are really benefiting from these virtual visits. Our faculty and students have developed creative new ways of learning together, like having a virtual poetry reading in Spanish. And faculty and students have gotten to bring their brothers and sisters and parents and children and even pets to class from time to time. What we're learning now is going to help us as we look to the future. It will strengthen us. It will enrich our academic offerings. And so right now we're focusing on completing the semester successfully. And at the same time, we're preparing for an exciting array of summer offerings. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Anne Marie. I can't say enough. I heard in the recent community conversation that President Rowe really was addressing students this past Wednesday and was really talking about this is the time to really take that pressure off of yourself and really choose that pass-fail option. It really hit home with me. I was on the phone with a family this afternoon whose daughter was tested positive for COVID and is carrying a fever for over 40 days. And the first thing I said to this family is, let's really help you by taking that pass-fail option. Even if I need to help communicate to your faculty, let's do that. So with that, I'd like to turn to give some positive news and to really hear from Kathleen Powell. Can you tell us, Kathleen, how are things going with the Career Center and in your mission and really helping students these days?
Thank you, Mark. I think first and foremost, I want families to understand that the mission of the Cone Career Center has not changed, that supporting our students around their career development and their career readiness is first and foremost for us. But I will tell you that our programs and services and that delivery has certainly changed, and we have had to pivot. I would like to tell you that we were early adopters of using our technology that we have at William and Mary and leveraging that to connect with your students, offering career advising sessions through Zoom. We knew that students' space and place was going to be different in terms of distractions, and we talked about pets and little ones running around and siblings, and we actually extended our career advising off hours to evening to accommodate some of those students who might have a different need. We've also taken all of our, again, leveraging technology, so we're all learning new skills, but we have taken all of our workshops and our crash courses, and we figured out how to make them digital with voiceover. So I'm learning Proctoring, which is fascinating to me, and just how we do this to make all of those resources that we have available digital to our students, and we put them in Tribe Careers. I will also say that every student at William and Mary has an account in Tribe Careers, and all of this information is accessible there. And that's important that they know that that the resources are there, that we are open, and we are helping students. I also think it's important for parents to know that we talk about health and wellness at William and Mary, but in the Cone Career Center, we talk about career wellness. And we think that deep human connection is so William and Mary and so important that we have actually reached out to every senior through email, and we wanted to check on them to find out how their plans were going. We know some things have been upended. We know that we're still seeing internships posted and full-time opportunities coming to light. We are leveraging our boards and our alumni, and we are still doing meetups. We are doing office hours through our employer advisory board. They are giving advice, which they have not done in the platform that we're doing right now. And it's exciting to me to know that in a time, this recession is something that is real. But we are using our champions, and we're leveraging the champions for William and Mary to support our students. And the last thing that I will share is that we have just lifted up a university-wide front. It's called it's a new career pathways team, and we're taking all that human potential and capital for all of those on campus that wake up every morning and think career is what's important. And so we're going to be doing some really exciting things. So my message to the families who are listening this evening is that we are open, we are here to support, we want that deep human connection. We are William and Mary, and we're going to make this happen. Thank you.
Kathleen, it was really inspiring. I got a few emails from families just a few weeks ago who were wanting to offer online internships, even virtually. And I was really impressed with how quickly people in the Cohen Career Center pivoted, contacted the family, was able to get that in place. And I just think that that's just a testament to who we are, our high touch, and the incredible work that you're doing over there at the Cohen Career Center. I know that parents always want to know, what about internships and what about career readiness and how are we going to do that? So thank you so much for talking to us today about things that are going on at the Cohen Career Center. Nick, I know you're last and I know that this is very important. Our International Travel and Security Manager, tell us a little bit about sort of the challenges for future and current international travel.
Sure. So one of the challenges that we saw during this time was tracking our international footprint. Our Reef Center directors, Steve Hansen, made the decision early on to take care of every single individual who was overseas. So the first question we asked was, do we know where every single traveler is right now? And the clear answer for us was no. We do not have a sophisticated software travel tracking system where we can say with 100% certainty that we know exactly where everyone is at all times. We had to go to all 5 colleges, plus take a look at our unofficial travel, like our scuba club going to Belize, and really communicate with campus partners to manually find out where our students and faculty were around the globe. We also had roughly around 300 students on study abroad and research opportunities and internships. And we had students who had underlying issues, respiratory issues. They didn't feel comfortable traveling, and students who had no real home. We had one instance where we had a State Department family living in Khartoum, Sudan, and we could not in good conscience send their daughter home back to Sudan to live. So we were trying to manage a whole lot of range of issues, but I do want to say that we are a global institution. Our mission at the Reef Center is to support, promote the internationalization of learning, teaching, research, and community engagement. So we really went into this pandemic with strong core values, which I think really helped our students in their time of need. So how did we mitigate a lot of these issues? We had to communicate with campus partners in a whole new way. We have a unified message. We also had several existing policies which we could draw upon. A global pandemic was not addressed in our policies, nor is it addressed with our international insurance. So we're all trying to get on the same page and get one unified message out. Lastly, I do want to acknowledge our global education team, Sylvia Mittendorfer, our director, Molly DeSnaffney, Nasha Lewis, and the rest of the global engagement team, who really gathered most of the data and managed the Herculean task of making sure that each student's situation was well documented and how each of them would finish out the semester and receive credit. This was a logistical nightmare for every university, and they managed it with such composure, and they really made it look easy.
Thank you, Nick. I have to, a real big shout out to Eva Wong, my partner in international student scholars and programs, when we pivoted to be able to help as many international students with emergencies, as well as being able to help any student in need. It was just amazing. Steve Hansen was right there jumping in to make sure that we have policies and things set up to really help our students. And that's something that I think we all very much value. So I will tell you, families, it is 5:24 and we have about 35 minutes in this program left. So I'm going to start by asking some questions. We received over 300 questions in the queue in just 2 days. We hope this forum will be a very good starting point for discussion. However, we know that we will not have enough time to address all of your questions. If you do have additional questions that are not addressed, please feel free to refer to the coronavirus website, wm.edu/coronavirus. There are a lot of information there in the frequently asked questions. And I know Brian Whitson and his entire communication team are constantly updating that information to ensure that the best information is there first. If there is something that we can't answer, just email us. Email us at families@wm.edu, and we'll do our best to route those questions to where they need to go. So let's get started. Panel, are you ready? Anne-Marie, top question goes to you. You've provided a few examples of the challenges faculty and students have experienced over the last month. How have we addressed these, and how might virtual teaching and learning evolve this summer?
You know, we've addressed those. I mentioned briefly some policy changes for greater flexibility, certainly equipping faculty, not just equipping them with new technological skills, but also new knowledge about some of the potential, some of the possibilities. And so I think we're going to see that learning of the faculty continuing. Already there are fellows being selected, faculty who will partner, faculty who are really comfortable and effective in this environment, and they will partner with others who are still looking to further develop their delivery modes. So I see us continuing to take advantage of some of these new opportunities, certainly engage with others in higher education to make sure we're benefiting from all of the best practices, you know, that collectively we're developing. So I think there's a lot of optimism, a lot of excitement about possibilities for the future. But at the same time, to be perfectly honest, it's also, we're also aware that this doesn't happen overnight. Really good teaching takes a lot of effort, a lot of labor, but we are committed to that. That's one of the hallmarks of William and Mary, and we're certainly holding on to our commitment to excellence.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. Sam, the next question is for you and is probably one of the most popular questions we've gotten this week. How and what was the process for determining rebates for students?
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that one. But before I do that, can I just go back? I want to comment on Nick's discussion of study abroad, because one of the things we did in the emergency management team early on was realize that we did have all of those students abroad. And so we expanded the team to bring in the folks from the Reef Center. And I was just amazed with the personal touch that went along with that. They were talking personally, directly with every student in whatever their situation was, with families, working those students, finding them ways to get back into the United States. So it was amazing effort that ordinarily, you know, I would not have seen as part of the emergency management team. So with that, going to the rebate question, it became apparent to us early on when the pandemic emerged, and everyone will remember that the students left for spring break intending to come back from spring break, and then we suspended classes and then went to remote teaching and the teleworking environment. But it became very apparent to us that obviously we were not going to bring students back into our housing program, and that was going to have an impact on the housing as well as dining and ultimately parking services. And so those were the three areas that we looked to provide rebates to students. Housing based on the length of contract that the students had in place for that. Dining really based on the meal plan that they had chosen, including whether they had dining dollars or not dining dollars and all of those type of things. And so, you know, we had closed the residence hall as of March 25th. So that became our start point for looking at those calculations. And I think it was April 10th that we sent out rebates to students, applying those, you know, placing those into accounts. And even sooner for some students who are in an emergency situation in needing support right away. In terms of the calculation, what we did was we looked at the total cost to the students that was being charged, obviously. We looked at the length of time that was part of this school year. Where were we in terms of that? And then what were the other costs that we had to occur? I think the challenging thing for a nonprofit like William and Mary is, you know, we're not a for-profit institution. We're not, we spend the revenue that we bring in. And so what happens is the fixed cost, and an example of a fixed cost in housing would be the debt service that we pay on our dormitories and that type of thing. We realize those costs don't go away whether we have students in the residence halls or not. And so in working through the calculations, we looked at, what were variable costs, what were fixed costs. Again, where were we in terms of the total program? In something in dining, we really looked at what's the plan that they are under, and how much of that is meal plan, how much of that in dining dollars. So for students, it was very varied in terms of the amount that they got in there. And then for parking, that was just a strict proration of it. At the end of the day, we were balancing the benefit of the student to the student that was being lost against the overall, financial health of the institution.
Sam, would you say that there was in student residency in-state versus out-of-state taken into consideration when planning rebates?
You didn't need to, because all three of those categories, housing, dining, and parking, it's a common cost, whether you're in-state or out-of-state. There's no differential in that. And so we didn't have to make that kind of distinction.
Thank you very much. The next question is a move-out question related to residence life. And so I'm going to take this question. When be able to retrieve their belongings? I wanted to tell you that we have been planning in consultation with the Secretary of Education's office and cognizant of the governor's orders. We have a path forward and will communicate that to all students, residential and families next week. I will tell you that we are beginning the great refrigerator clean out of 2020. Basically, we're hoping to get everything out of those refrigerators before you get back to campus to get the rest of your belongings. Rented units are being cleaned out by the rental company. Privately owned units will be cleaned out by William & Mary Building Services. So just to let you know, there will be area directors that will be entering student rooms over the next 2 weeks to complete a quick visual check to make sure any maintenance issues, leaks, or mold are not there. As always, you can get that information from Res Life. Families, will always stay connected to you to continue to provide the most up-to-date information. And even President Rowe was pretty excited that those refrigerators are going to be cleaned out before you get back to them. So with that, I want to jump to Kathleen and Anne Marie. Will research opportunities and internships be available for students this summer?
I'll jump in. Absolutely. We are continuing our high impact learning practices. These two are hallmarks of a William & Mary experience. And so we have moved some internships to be remote. We're very excited about that. Many of those are being offered through our Washington Center. Kathleen can talk about the whole array that she and her staff are working on. And certainly our students will continue our strong tradition of doing research during the summer. They'll do it differently, but they've been working closely with their faculty mentors to determine how that will be adjusted in this unique environment.
Thank you, Anne Marie. So the Cohen Career Center has been tracking postings in our Tribe Career System since the middle of March. And I am happy to share that just in this week alone, we had 47 new internships posted. So it's interesting in terms of what the media is telling us, but I think what happens for William & Mary, we are leveraging the outreach that we're doing. We are seeing our employers coming to the table. They are trying to look at how they can work with our students. And I think Anne Marie mentioned this, it's virtual opportunities. So I would say the majority of our internships that we have seen that would have been in person have moved to virtual, and students are still having opportunities and employers are still looking to hire. So I think that's the message. There are opportunities, and take advantage of those.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Our next question goes to Nick. When do you think our students will be able to resume travel abroad?
Well, there are a number of factors that we will be looking at. And by we, I mean the International Travel Review Committee, which consists of myself, Sylvia Mittendorfer, and Pamela Mason, our University Compliance Officer. With each person wanting to travel internationally, I think it will be incumbent upon us as a committee to do our due diligence on our #1 priority, which is the health and safety of every traveler. With that said, the committee will be looking at a number of different criteria, and I'll list a few triggers for us that as a committee that will help us determine when a good time to start easing restrictions on international travel. So some of the criteria that we look at are what are the entry restrictions in each country? Will the borders be open? And will there be a removal of quarantine upon arrival, which is very important. Resumption of commercial aviation to the destination. Will travelers be able to obtain visas? And obviously, we'll be strongly be looking at the CDC and State Department notices and advisories to see when each country is downgraded, if at all. Some other things that we will be looking at is our healthcare quality ranking at each destination, our relationship with host institutions where we send students, the ease of air travel. Are students able to fly directly into the country, or do they have to go through a more riskier country to travel to get there? The social and economic impact on local population, food security, community trust, etc. And how quickly can students get to an international airport from where they are? So these are, just some of the criteria that my colleagues at other universities around the world are facing. But we are benchmarking with each other to see what the roadmap ahead looks like and how we can do this in a safe and effective manner for every William and Mary student. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anne Marie, in thinking about that, will international students be able to take online classes if travel bans are still in place this fall?
We do plan to accommodate as many international students as possible online. And of course, for those who can join us, they will be most welcome. In the same way that the Reef Center worked individually with each William and Mary student abroad and each international student here who had to leave, they're working individually with each student to determine what their situation might be and to do some contingency planning. We also are considering going to some of our international students to deliver our curriculum if they're not able to join us. So in the case of China, for example, assuming it's safe, assuming it's advisable, there's a chance we will have William and Mary going to China if our students from there can't join us. So we're working, the message is we're working really consistently with each individual student to determine learning needs and creating scenarios to meet those.
Thank you, Anne Marie. I know that Steve Hansen was diligent in jumping into our talking and with our partner institutions abroad, especially for our Chinese students, that if they have to be in China at home, that we are making plans for those students as well. Sam, our next question is for you. How is William and Mary handling student employment during the summer and this coming fall?
Yeah, great question. We know that, we have the goals, as we said earlier, of maintaining instruction, maintaining our essential business operations, and maintaining, the research that goes on here on campus. Students are a vital piece of that from, a work effort and a learning effort for them. But also we recognize that student financial aid and student income generated through their work effort is just as critical for many of those students. We were fortunate that the federal work study program, they changed their guidelines. They made those more flexible. So in the current environment, we were able to keep paying work study students directly, even if they were not able to do their job. So that was really important. The other thing that we've done for this, and it's going into the summer as well, we've asked all of the units that typically use student employees to see, can those student employees telework like the rest of us are doing? And where they can contribute, we're able to offer those job opportunities to those students. And again, we expect that to continue through the summer. When we get to the fall, we expect them to be back here on campus with the job opportunities they've had before.
Thank you, Sam. We do have an undergraduate student who is a senior who puts together our monthly newsletters, and she is still, and he are still working from home, and we are still being able to monitor that progress. And I'm happy to say that we are still able to employ some of our students, and that's exciting to be able to continue that.
Well, that's the kind of effort we're looking for everybody on campus.
Thank you, Sam. Anne Marie, I do have a question. There's been a lot of questions from families about proctoring. Can you tell us a little bit about online tests, and why do we need proctoring software when we have an honor code?
I sure can address that, Mark. It may be useful for families to know William and Mary actually has used online remote proctoring service for more than 5 years. And we recently changed our partner to HonorLock because of the unique needs in this current learning environment. We procured this tool after very careful vetting and a rigorous security review by our instructional technology team with input from the registrar from procurement. So we're very comfortable with the standards of data security, privacy, accessibility. I know that those have been some of the concerns. Remote proctoring is a useful option for exam integrity, but it won't be used in all courses. Many faculty members actually have other assessment tools. They have students create portfolios, they write research papers, they do take-home exams, and so it will be a small number of instructors and students who actually are using the HonorLock remote proctoring this semester, but it is an important tool for us to have available. There are some accrediting organizations that our students are moving toward, some certificates and things that our students need that actually require proctoring of exams in order for those grades to count. So we're wanting to be compliant in that landscape. But the honor code is alive and well. We very much value that tradition at William and Mary, and it certainly is in place. I think we just underscore that there are situations that require an online remote proctoring service. And in those cases, we have it available, but likely most faculty and students won't need to avail themselves of that.
Thanks, Anne Marie. I know with discussions recently, even with the Student Assembly president and the Student Assembly, they have very much understood the value of what we're trying to do to ensure that not only the William and Mary Honor Code, but also the values in which we hold very dear are put into place as we move through this very interesting time. Kathleen, our next question goes to you. What are you hearing from employers? What does the job landscape look like, especially for graduating seniors?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Mark. And, we are scanning, doing that environmental scan with our employers. We are talking to them. We are fortunate in the sense that when we're having those conversations, they are sharing with us that brand for them is important and that they are keeping their workforce. And they might be pivoting a bit in terms of, instead of having them start in person, they might have them be virtual. And then when some of these policies are lifted, they'll go to in person. To put a human, kind of a human face on this conversation, it is so joyful to have students connect with us and tell us that they've received offers and that they're accepting these offers. Just as early as this morning, a student reached out and just was thankful to have the opportunity to have the support of the Career Center to help them. So, it really depends on the location. We are mapping. I love data, so I've been watching and paying attention to some of the things that are happening in that employment landscape. And as you can imagine, the positions that have close proximity in the work have really slowed down in terms of that hiring process. But we are still seeing in our system the tech, the IT opportunities, government, nonprofit, biotech, healthcare, We benchmark with our Virginia directors in the Commonwealth, and they are seeing some similar things, looking at what is happening across the country in terms of the employment market. And things are down between 10 and 15% depending on the state. And we're paying attention to that because we know students are across the globe, basically, in terms of those who come to William and Mary. So we are being very, very mindful, using data, making informed decisions, and sharing that out with our students who are connecting with us.
Thanks, Kathleen.
You're welcome.
Sam, another question for you. How much stimulus funding has William and Mary received, and how much of that is going back to students?
Well, we've been notified, not yet received. We've been notified that we're going to get just under $2 million as the direct support for students that will come in. And again, that's to address student needs that arise from the COVID-19 virus, but that's pretty broadly defined in terms of the impact. The federal government is very specific about wanting that to be sort of need-based money to go to students who have the greatest need, and that be applied pretty much not across the board, but more specifically to that population. So we will be looking to do that. We're going to look to get those funds into the hands of students, as soon as possible. We expect we'll have our work done in the next couple of weeks. We'll receive the money from the federal government and move those dollars in. I would say though, Mark, that we have students here on campus that are not eligible for the federal funding. There's some guidelines around that. And we're very sensitive to students who have need that aren't eligible for that. And we'll be looking to use university funds to be able to address students who are in any type of emergency situation at the same time. So we will make the pool larger than that, just what we're getting from the feds.
Thanks, Sam. I know that we have really pivoted. The folks in finance and the several offices that make up financial operations have just really partnered for us to provide emergency funding for students. I have to give a shout out to my folks in the Dean of Students Office and Student Success. Thank you for all of the work that you have done, especially Marjorie Thomas. She's my supervisor, so I have to kind of mention the Dean of Students. But Sam, I do have a follow-up question for you.
Okay.
How is William and Mary supporting essential and contract workers at this time?
Well, as the president said, when we looked at the goals, one of the things we said was we wanted to protect the safety and the employment of our current employees. One of the reasons for doing a hiring freeze is to be able to free up money so that we can support those employees for as long as possible. We're fortunate that to this point, unlike many industries in the country, we have not had to furlough or lay off anyone from campus. And so we've been able to keep not only salaried full-time workers, but also our hourly workers here on campus or working remotely through telework and provide that support for them. So, we're glad that we've been able to do that. The other thing that's happened is, the governor expanded what was called personal emergency leave and created 160 hours of that. And while we fund that as an institution, we're glad to have that because that's another tool that an employee can use to continue to be paid, for as long as possible while we work through the pandemic. We work very closely with our contractors like Sodexo, which is our contractor for dining services. They have a large number of employees. They have gone through and had to do some furloughs of those employees. And they've also worked to place them in other areas where they have not higher ed, where they also have employment to keep as many of those folks working as possible. I know they've extended their health benefits, even if they're on furlough, to make sure they cover those costs. So we work closely with them.
Thanks, Sam. We have about 11 minutes left, and so I will continue to ask questions as long as we have time. Our next question is for President Rowe. If we are allowed to return to campus this fall, what planning efforts are underway now to ensure students, faculty, and staff will be safe when resuming in-person operations?
Thanks so much, Mark. That's the key question, the practical question that we've charged our short-term planning group to tackle. And we're thinking about that in 5 domains. We're thinking about a resilient curriculum, And we're thinking about how we de-densify the campus for staff and for students and for faculty. How could we convene in much smaller groups? Those are linked areas of study. So you can imagine we could flip all lectures so that students are watching lectures at home for homework and then meeting in much smaller groups, lab groups or discussion groups during the day in person. The governor's given us a 10-person limit before we went to the stay-at-home order, and it seems like we will phase back out to that. So we're modeling with those kinds of tools. We're thinking about what's a resilient campus? How do we make ourselves more virus-proof by ensuring that we are using electronic payment, for example, much more often than we do now. So we're not handing things back and forth to each other. Thinking about how we can change the physical plant so that it's easier to clean and rotate perhaps classes through different spaces to reduce the cleaning need. We're thinking about, as Kathleen just said, the fact that our graduates and our recent alums are entering the worst economy since the Great Recession. And so how do we support them into career pathways? That's an important rapid study phase that we're going to be engaging with Kathleen's leadership in the next month. And lastly, we're thinking about a big picture question. What are the broad calls to service, to helping others who are more vulnerable that William & Mary can lead here and more broadly in the nation? Who are our partners in those broad calls to service? Service to others is a deep part of our identity as an institution. We think there's a real need to come together around that question, around questions of social equity and public health. And so part of our rapid response is looking even beyond this coming semester.
Thank you, President Rowe. Anne Marie, this question is for you. As you know, final exams can be very stressful for students during a normal semester. How are faculty members supporting students as they prepare for exams during this particular unique semester?
Great question, Mark. I think faculty members are really attentive to the fact that this is an unusual time for students, that student anxiety is high. There are so many different examples. I would say, just to give a few, some faculty members have additional study groups so that they're offering opportunities for students to meet with them outside of class more frequently to prepare. Oftentimes our William & Mary students are fully prepared. They just want to double check that. So those kinds of activities are taking place. The students themselves work with one another. Faculty urge them to have peers for studying. You know, when we're on campus, students can get together in the library, work together, refine their ideas, strengthen their understanding. So faculty are helping students find ways, and some of the students are finding these on their own, to work together, to exchange ideas, and, you know, to kind of feel as comfortable as they can going into this. It's remarkable. I don't think I have a conversation with the faculty member who doesn't express empathy, compassion. I think there's just a real collective awareness that this isn't easy for anyone. And it does really mean that we have to go above and beyond to anticipate what student learning needs might be and to address those.
Mark, can I add a little riff on that? Great answer.
Yes, please.
This is really an ask to the parents and families out there to be our partners in reducing stress. And there's two incredibly important ways that you can help our students together in that. One is, if something's not working, let the faculty member know. Students are so circumspect at William & Mary. They have really high standards for themselves. They feel they should be able to make it work, but none of us can make this work solo right now. So just ask, say, this isn't working. How can we think it through together? And assume that your faculty member is going to be your partner, because they are. When you look at the screen, you see some of my great partners in solving the challenges that we're facing. None of us could have done that well if we were doing it solo. The second thing is to help students change their default mindset. Again, our students at William and Mary are driven to triumph, especially at the end of the semester. It will be a triumph to finish. Pass fail should be the default. And if you want to grade back, think about deciding that you're going to do that in May. Don't make that decision now. Make the decision for the default to take stress off you. And if you do that, you will do better. To reduce the stress is probably the best thing that you can do to improve outcomes for yourself. So help your students, help your children internalize that message that pass fail is the default, not the exception. And that will relieve enormous amounts of stress. Last thing is our transcripts will say COVID-19 on them, every single one. So there is no possibility of anybody misconstruing the decisions that students make about pass fail.
It's a very good point, President Rowe. Thank you for that. I noticed that we are sort of getting to the top of the hour, and I'd like to just give a shout out, and then President Rowe, I'm going to ask you one more question and then ask you to wrap up our program for us tonight. Before I turn this back over to you, I'd like to remind everyone that this session will be recorded and available for viewing after the program. If you do have additional questions that we haven't addressed specifically, please refer to the wm.edu/coronavirus website with the most up-to-date frequently asked questions. If there is not an answer on that frequently asked questions, do email us. families@wm.edu will be our best route for you to ask questions, and we will answer every single one of those to get you to the appropriate office. It may take us a little while. Parents, you've been very active on the parent Facebook group. You've been very active communicating with administrators and asking questions. And I thank you for being a partner in your students' success. And I just reinforces every time that we do anything for students or families and work together, it reinforces the value of why I'm still excited each and every day to work with an incredible group of colleagues, incredible students, and very supportive families. So with that, President Rowe, I'd like you to ask you one last question, and then you can end our program. How does a William and Mary education remain distinctive in this time?
Well, we are teaching and learning at a distance right now, Mark, but our philosophy is the same, that we give our amazing students direct access to world-class faculty and staff, and that we invite them to work together at the edge of knowledge, whether that's in research or in applied experiences or in the creative arts. And that's going on right now in incredibly exciting ways. I'm thinking of, the students in Professor Carrie Dolan's class who are studying epidemiology right now and seeing their own classwork unfold around them. And I'm thinking about the students in the Introduction to Engineering Design who collaborated online with their staff and faculty to create face masks for our local hospitals. And we printed them up on our 3D printers at William & Mary, several hundred of them. It was incredibly satisfying to get the thank you note and then to see the stages of that process. Those are two examples of the amazing work at the edge of knowledge, because we're all at the edge of knowledge right now that our students are doing with our faculty and staff here. I'd add, right now, more than ever, we need complex problem solvers who have compassion and are service-minded, who are thinking about giving back to their communities. I just had a wonderful email exchange with an alum who's a senior leader at Microsoft who's studying the spread of the virus in their modeling unit. And he said this to me, he said, we need complex problem solvers who are compassionate, who are thinking about humane issues. And that's our William & Mary graduates. That's what we prepare human beings to be here. So I think that's my strongest message for why we're so grateful that you have entrusted your amazing human beings with us. I want to add one more thing. It wasn't exactly your question, Mark, but we're committed to doing what we can to reduce the uncertainty that students and faculty and staff and families are facing. It's incredibly hard to do at a moment of intense uncertainty, but there are steps we can take. So many of you know that we've made the decision not to increase tuition and mandatory fees next year for any student, graduate students, undergraduates, in-state, out-of-state. That's an action that moves one kind of uncertainty off the table. So it's important for us to hear from you what the other uncertainties are, and we will continue to mull on them and do our best to minimize their effect. Thanks, Mark. I'm going to sign off, and thanks everybody, all my colleagues for joining. It's been really wonderful to talk with you. Thanks to the families out there for trusting us with your wonderful students. I'm going to sign off the way I always do these days by saying, stay well, everybody.